Hey guys, so I'm Evan Borsier, and today I'm here to talk about the Greyhaven's Band of Gold video. Recently put this up, and Jesse said he wanted to see the story of making this, and so I figured I'm happy to oblige. So the story starts with me getting contacted by the Greyhavens, who I've worked with a number of times, and Dave Radford is the kind of head guy of the two people that are the Greyhavens. And he said, hey, we want to do a music video for the song. It's called Band of Gold. And the original idea was, what if we did a music video that was all us at a wedding, but kind of, a wedding reception, and we were the wedding band, and was kind of a performance-y, narrative-ish concept video. Excuse me. And I was like, that's cool. But it's going to be hard to make a wedding because we don't have endless money to work with. So then we talked about filming a wedding and filming them performing separately and kind of merging the two and seeing if we could make that work. And so I sent them some visual references to a wedding that I did about a year ago now, I guess, a little less than that, for two friends of mine, Matt and Lindsay. And so I sent them this video as a reference when they were like, we want a cool kind of hip wedding reception vibe, and they loved it. And so like, we really like that, but we were still trying to figure out all the logistics because like having an event like this costs a significant amount of money. So we periodically talked about, well, what if we were able to piggyback on someone else's wedding or something, but we also didn't have a ton of time. We had like 2 or 3 months, I think, and there aren't that many weddings going on in the spring when it's still freezing out in Massachusetts. So I entered plan B, which was, what if we did a narrative video and we were able to use this wedding as the conclusion to the narrative video, because we already have the wedding and that's the hard, expensive part. And we were able to shoot the rest of the story of basically what leads to the wedding, and that would be the Band of Gold story. And so Dave was super interested, and I had access to Matt and Lindsay, and they were down to act, and so that was kind of the origin of the idea, as it were. And so we then had to create a whole story that would kind of lead to this wedding conclusion. And that went through a lot of iterations. And so initially, it was basically, the idea was, let's tell a story of a cute couple meets, they fall in love, they date, they have fun, they get engaged, they get married at the end. And we kind of started shooting some stuff with that, and I wasn't super happy with how it was feeling. And so actually what I did to kind of help figure out and rough that in, and I don't have the initial one anymore, but was that I did these rough cuts with the song where I downloaded a bunch of references and basically put the song in and rough cut our whole story scene-wise using reference footage. And the idea was that, hey, let's see how this actually plays out, how much time we have. So like this was the idea of, oh, this is where they're gonna first meet, and I think this is from some Calvin Harris music video or something. And we were talking about having band performance footage interspersed for a while, and decided there just wasn't time for it, and it cut the story up too much. So then they were gonna go on a date, and at this point, this version, we'd already shot a little bit of stuff with them, and I just wasn't happy with how it was feeling. There was no real buy-in, there was no conflict. It was just kind of like, attractive people have a great life and get married, and what fun is that? So over the weekend, a few months ago, I was going on vacation with my wife and reading the screenwriting book, and really decided that this needed to have some kind of conflict in it. So we decided about, well, what if the problem is Matt has to work to get the ring, and what if there's an issue with getting the ring? And so that went through a lot of iterations of, okay, well, what does he do for work? How do we make that interesting? So on and so forth. And went through kind of a bunch of different ideas, and that's where you'll probably see over here, maybe not. There were a number of these edits that were kind of rough. Let's figure out the story, and so it changed a good number of times. One point, Matt was working differently. At one point, And some of it was little. Like at one point, the idea was that he was going to finally save up all his money and have this moment of like, yay, I can afford the ring, and go talk to her dad and ask her dad's permission. And that it was coming home from that was when he would find out that his house had been broken into and all the money was gone. And we talked about actually having him not get the money back, that maybe the dad gives him her grandmother's ring or something. And so really it was an interesting exercise in kind of writing and directing, and my first real exercise with writing something this complicated narratively. So we ended up really revising it as we shot it too, where we would kind of figure it out and make it up on the run. And so it wasn't shot chronologically. It was shot over the course of like 2 months, because it was kind of just whenever I could get time with Matt and Lindsay. And so like this first scene is the last thing that we shot actually, and was another changed plan on the day of. Originally they were not even originally, but on this day when we met, the plan was that her car was going to wouldn't start in the parking lot, and that he comes and jumps it, and that's kind of the initiation of their relationship. And so we were at the parking lot of this deli and went in to get food, and we're just talking and like, what if they met in here instead? And literally made up this whole scene while we were standing there. So it was kind of the epitome of revisionist stuff. So the other issue we had is, everything is supposed to match this wedding that's already been shot. So, we kind of had to match the aesthetic, because I didn't want to shoot everything that feels super produced music video-ish and then come into this and have it stick out like a sore thumb. So decided to shoot all of my C100 and shoot all handheld to just keep it feeling kind of in this fine line between, it feels a little narrative, but it also feels a little doc. It's not really super lit. It's very natural feeling. Obviously they're non-actors, so kind of trying to ride that line. So the whole shoot was pretty much me handheld with my C100, no crew or anything, except for a few days that we had Matt Derderian helping. So shooting it was honestly relatively easy. It was more coming up with a story that made sense that was hard. So this is one of the first things we shot, and was just the idea of them talking on the phone. And one of the keys was really setting up situations where they could get honest interactions out of each other. So like Matt's really good at making her laugh. And so in this whole phone conversation, Lindsay's standing out of frame while we shoot this half of the conversation, and they're just talking about who knows what and kind of making each other laugh and whatnot. And the same thing when we do the other side of it with Matt, and we wanted him to kind of be this fun goofy character. And so then when we wanted to film like this date, that was really the idea again, is I would just kind of set them up of like, hey, you're having fun, this is what it is. And for the most part would let Matt take the lead, and Lindsay was really good at following him. And so the other thing that happened a whole lot on this shoot was just going out and kind of asking people if stuff was okay. So like this deli, we walked in and we're like, hey, do you mind if we shoot a music video in here? And they were like, yeah, sure, why not? So we did a quick scene with them and asked the nice lady to pretend to ring them up and everything. This other restaurant, we just kind of walked in and we're like, hey, we're filming a story. Do you mind if we shoot in here? And they're like, no, that's totally fine. And we didn't really get any no's from anyone. Everyone was generally pretty chill. This was another one of the first scenes we shot when it was mainly a montage of just them being in love together. It was them making a mess, making brownies. So we had to ask a lot of people. Like this jeweler dude went out and found a jeweler and was like, hey, we want a jeweler to feature prominently in this music video. Will you help? And he was like, yeah, sure. And he was the bomb. He cleaned the ring and everything and made it look right in the case and did a bunch of cool stuff for us. So we're super thankful for him. And another just funny commentary thing with this video is that you see the many faces of Matt. Is like he starts off as this like kind of skater punk kid sort of with the RVCA thing, and progresses to like he's kind of hipstery sometimes, and this is really just how Matt is the great part. But so sometimes he's kind of more hipster, and then like in this coloring scene he's kind of truckery, like he belongs at a country concert, and then he's back to being hipstery, and I don't know, for some reason that makes me laugh. But it's really who he is, and these guys are a real couple, so So this was just another scene that we added to kind of add some relationship progression and something fun that they could be doing. So Matt goes out, looks at the rings, decides he can't afford it and has to save up. This is her real ring that they cleaned up and put in the display for us. And goes home and starts saving. And it's another totally out of order thing. We shot all the ring stuff on one of the last days. So this scene and the scene at the end in the jewelers are all shot on the same day. This is all shot way beforehand. And so it was really a mess. You know, it took like 2 months of shooting stuff. And you kind of have this puzzle that you're just slowly piecing together of like, okay, we're going to shoot all the stuff of him working. So this was all pretty much shot on one day. And made it up as we were there again, really. We had this idea of like, okay, Matt's gonna work, so we went to the office. This is the office of the church that he's a part of, and Matt Derdarian here, who was helping out, I was like, throw a shirt on and be a boss and kind of hassle him with a bunch of work. So it really, and I don't say this to be proud of it, but it was an exercise in like, you know, we couldn't really super plan anything because we didn't know what we were going into. More of Matt saving, and the envelope idea that was kind of a visual progression thing that we could have him come back to. Photos they had around to kind of make it feel like it's taking place over a lot of time. This is another one of the first scenes we shot, and another just funny thing about it, if you track Matt's facial hair progression throughout the video, I mean, you can just chalk it up to this being over the course of weeks or months or whatever, but it's all over the place. And it gets shorter and longer and pretty funny. So this is one of the few shots that is lit because it wasn't actually nighttime movie scene and we wanted to make it feel that way. So there's a case light over on their right that's diffused and kind of bouncing into the wall, and then everything is just color balanced blue, and we had the TV on and just tried to make something feel a little like a cool night scene. And the whole thing kind of pushes warm and blue. I tend to not really sit in regular color temperatures too much. This was another scene that was initially cut that was a more involved scene, where we wanted to put conflict in there, just to add, you know, before we had the conflict with the ring, it was like, well, what if they have a big fight and they have to apologize? And we ended up cutting that and going to, you know, his house getting broken into, but this scene got pulled back in. It's another little depth thing. So another shot of him working, them hanging out together, and then this idea that was made up on the day of we knew he was going to save up, but initially it was just him working, and him working got kind of old, that we can only show that so much. So we were like, well, what if you had to sell something or get rid of something you really cared about? And so we went back to the apartment and set it up where he could kind of have this moment of he's looking at rings and looking at the money he has and seeing what he can afford, and decides that to push him over the edge, he really has to sell the guitar, because he cares about her more than he cares about his guitar and everything else. And this was another key shot, because we wanted to make sure that we showed him leaving the money when he went to do the guitar, and we wanted to kind of show how the apartment looked a little bit. So we didn't want to get too obvious with it, but that's where we wanted this wide, so that you could kind of see that stuff's pretty normal, stuff's pretty clean and whatnot. So then he goes to the music store, which is another place we walked in and we're like, hey, do you mind if we film you for a music video? And they were like, cool. And so that guy was awesome and super helpful. And then we came back to the apartment and we just trashed it on purpose and knocked stuff over and dumped stuff out, and wanted to leave it intentionally dark and silhouette-y and moody, push the shutter speed up so that everything would feel kind of stuttery and unnatural. So this was kind of an interesting scene because there's some tough logic here, admittedly, of like, you know, where he's looking and why he's looking there, and like, you know, if it's not here, would it have ended up somewhere else in the scuffle? You know, I don't know, but I think the idea is that he's just desperate, so he starts looking everywhere to see if it got mixed up in something, and eventually just gives up and goes to bed. And I think he did a really good job of, you know, just to be, you know, I basically told him be frustrated and let's see how this goes, and then slump in the chair and shut the light off. And so he wakes up the next day, and the initial idea was that he checks his phone and has to go to work or something, and goes to grab a jacket, and the envelope got mixed up in there somehow. And this envelope, it was all real money because prop money looks lame and is hard to get. We beat the heck out of this envelope and the money between the like weeks of running around with it. So this is another part of the story that was admittedly a little it's a little just funny that they missed it, you know. Whether you can suspend that disbelief of somehow these thieves took his TV but missed an envelope full of cash is its own question. But Dave really liked the idea of him having this moment where he's like, okay, I'm just going to do this. And so that was really why we ended up doing this, was so that he could have this moment of, okay, I'm done waiting. I'm going to go just ask her to marry me right now. So we had him go down, buys the ring, which was another just totally unlit. You know, all this stuff is really doc style. None of this is lit. You know, we're just shutting lights off, if anything, and messing with the room, but we're not using movie lights. And this whole sequence, which this is another day, this is like a week after all this stuff of him buying the ring. So if you notice, he grabbed the wrong hoodie. This one's all black. And then this one has like all this white binding on it. So continuity errors, but no one's going to notice. Maybe you did notice. Let me know if you did. And originally he was going to run to where she works. And we were figuring out where she could work, and we were chilling at the house. This is the house where they had the drawing coloring scene earlier. And we're like, well, what if he just went to where she lives? That kind of makes sense. And so we tried it, and we were happy with how it came out. And it's another one of those, you know, kind of this balance of, for me, the style of the piece is mixing, making shots last kind of a long time and not splitting things up that you don't have to, so that if we can, you know, move and like when he's in the ring shop a few times and stuff, like you can kind of move with the action. You don't have to totally split it up, but we did want to cut it so that it didn't feel quite so documentary. And so the idea was, you know, we had to get this shot of him running out of frame when we did this, so that we could run him back into frame when we shot a few weeks later. And then the transition over to the wedding. And so this was all the wedding footage we already had, and, you know, it was kind of their happy ending. And this is all also C100, though we used a Ronin for some of this stuff. But I kind of liked that the rest is handheld, and then the wedding is the one time everything gets a little more stabilized. So yeah, I mean, that's really a little insight into it. Hopefully it wasn't too long and too boring. If you have any other questions, I would be more than happy to answer them. You know, the edit was an interesting process because, like I said, it was super revisionist. We started with a rough cut of all reference footage, and then started shooting some of the scenes from the beginning, the middle, the end, and started cutting that and looking at where it was and cutting some stuff from the beginning, middle, the end. And to be totally honest, we hit one point where we had like probably 60% of it shot, and we're debating scrapping it because we just weren't feeling like it was really working. But I was really confident that it was going to get a lot better once we had these last important scenes with the break-in and stuff. So we decided to push through and finish shooting it. And I think it ended up coming together pretty well. But it definitely, you know, from that point of being like half done to 80% done, it was feeling a little weak. But that was before we had shot the proposal, before we had shot the break-in. Those were kind of our final linchpin scenes. So yeah, it's all super run and gun, super low budget. We didn't rent any gear or anything. It was just me and my C100, no audio, obviously. And so that was how we made the Band of Gold video. So we're thankful for everyone's help, and for the willingness of Matt and Lindsay to be guinea pigs in this whole thing, and for Dave and Leisha trusting us to do something totally crazy with it. So thank you so much for watching. If you have any more questions, comment below. Thanks. Bye.